In the world of our movie's heroes, life brightened up when they embraced reality. One young man felt upset with his stepmom because he wanted to understand her better. A professor took a bold step by trying an experiment with his student. An autistic guy faced his fears, went on a date, and a woman transformed her life. Despite their unique journeys, they all shared a mysterious secret. The story unfolds as we delve into Catherine's memories. She shares about her son Brady, who sadly passed away at 16. The narrative begins with Catherine noticing the weather forecast, prompting her to catch up with Brady, handing him his jacket as her husband Dale took him to school. Amidst these moments, Catherine arranges fresh flowers and checks her day planner, discovering a dinner reminder. She calls Dale to ensure he remembers their friend's invitation. Meanwhile, Walt, a university teacher, wakes up in a reflective mood, rushing to work. Sherry, who works at a television station, approaches the man after his lecture, requesting a postponement to focus on her work. Meanwhile, Jordy sits in a juvenile detention center, disinterested in joining a basketball game despite suggestions from the social worker. His mood sours further when a stray ball strikes him, triggering his anger. Dennis, who has mild autism, watches the weather forecast maintained by Sherry. Suddenly, the phone rings, sending him into a panic attack when a stranger seeks to speak with him. After work, Dale and his wife attend a friend's house where Jerry shares news about his new furnace. Meanwhile, Catherine finds herself bored in the company of Connie, Jerry's wife. Despite being offered a steak by a guest, Catherine declines, prompting her friends to speculate that she's embarked on a new diet. Later, Carl takes Jordy home, their relationship strained as the father disapproves of his son's behavior. Jordy's reckless act of stealing a car ends in a crash. Dale accompanies Catherine home, where she reveals her emotional distress about their deceased son. Dale tucks her into bed while Walt sifts through his desk, stumbling upon a newspaper clipping detailing the death of a local basketball star, revealed to be Dale and Catherine's son. During the night, Catherine wakes up in tears, but Dale fails to console her. Overwhelmed by grief, Catherine struggles deeply with their son's death. The next morning, Jordy joins his family for breakfast, where Carl insists he find a job. After Carl leaves, Jordy confides in his stepmother, Elise. Meanwhile, Dale's frustration mounts as he urges Catherine to compose herself, eventually instructing her to drive their son to school. Walt visits Dennis, bringing him books and letters while ensuring he has taken his medication. Among the letters is one from Sylvie, Dennis's friend. Walt suggests a walk, but Dennis suffers another seizure, prompting Walt to depart. Later, Walt visits Carl's house to discuss the accident. He recounts a tragic incident from 2 years prior when he forgot to pick up his brother from group therapy after drinking at a bar. Blaming himself for the forgetfulness, Walt rushed to collect his brother, resulting in an accident where he struck someone. Walt shares about the newspaper clipping featuring the person he hit, sparking memories. However, Carl, upon learning the basketball player's name, refuses to assist Walt. Catherine arrived at the accident site with flowers and a picnic basket, hoping to spend time with her deceased son. Upon returning home, she busied herself by organizing groceries from the supermarket onto shelves before venturing into her son's room. Memories flooded Catherine as she retrieved her child's t-shirt from the closet and lay on the bed. In the midst of her reverie, Catherine's privacy was interrupted by Brady, her other son. Despite her attempts to shoo him away, Brady insisted on going to his friend's house. Catherine quickly concealed a gun she spotted on the shelf before leaving the room. Meanwhile, Jordy attended a job interview at a pizza place where Administrator Tim inquired about his past incarceration in juvenile detention. Walt arrives home to find his wife, Abby, preparing gravy, though she's visibly upset about something. Despite their emotions, they decide to attend an art gallery event together, trying to manage their feelings. In the evening, they discuss the sale of paintings, but Abby grows irritated by Walt's distracted demeanor. She takes the TV remote from him, suggesting he engage in more active pursuits. Walt, however, protests, citing his workload. Abby questions why he stopped writing, further irking Walt. As Abby exits the room, Walt remains, watching the weather report presented by his student Sherry and feeling drawn to her. Meanwhile, Jordy lies on his bed, longing for change. He clears out unnecessary items, finding solace in the resulting simplicity. Unexpectedly, Eliza enters the room, catching sight of Jordy's actions and quickly retreats, embarrassed by the intrusion. Jordy heads to the park where he runs runs into Melissa, who is delighted to see him. She inquires about his life and invites him to a party. Meanwhile, Abby packs her belongings as Walt returns home, seeking a conversation with her. However, determined to go to her sister's house, Abby remains steadfast. Dennis takes his medication, and Sylvie calls again, proposing to meet. Nervous, Dennis contemplates the situation. In another part of town, Catherine spots Geordie, a friend of her late son, near a store. She discreetly hides by a car as he passes by, then continues with her shopping. Dennis contacts his brother Walt, seeking advice about Sylvie's call. Walt suggests he go to bed and reflect on everything. The next morning, Eliza enters Geordie's room to collect dirty laundry, apologizing for invading his space the previous night. Geordie is annoyed by her excessive politeness. At the university, Walt encounters Sherry, who helps him carry books from the library. As they spend more time together, Sherry suggests a smoke for relaxation after an active day. Catherine strolls through the city and spots a guy who bears a resemblance to her late son. Intrigued, she decides to follow him. At home, she finds herself once again in her son's bedroom as the family gathers for dinner. Brady shares his success in soccer, but Catherine desires him to play basketball like his older brother. Despite her husband's plea not to pressure Brady, Catherine leaves the table. Meanwhile, Elise examines herself in the mirror after her shower. Geordie enters her room without knocking, catching her off guard. Despite Elise's attempt to cover herself with a towel, Geordie lingers, unwilling to leave, and offers to help her relax. Carl arrives home, prompting Geordie to hide in the bathroom as his father talks to Elise, expressing a desire to spend time alone with his wife. Geordie watches them discreetly from behind the door. In another setting, Walt visits his brother along with Sherry. However, Dennis is reluctant to let the girl into the apartment, leading him to hide in the bathroom. The professor requests the girl's patience in waiting for him inside the car. Meanwhile, Dennis, dressed in his brother's attire, attempts to psych himself up for his date with Sylvie, yet struggles to muster the necessary enthusiasm. Sherry expresses dissatisfaction with the professor's prolonged absence and requests a ride home. Dale busies himself assembling a new furnace suggested by a friend, while Brady engages in basketball outside the house. A bystander inadvertently injures Brady's arm while commenting on his playing, prompting Brady to fetch a first aid kit from the kitchen, where his mother, Catherine, is cooking. Catherine notices Brady holding a ball and scolds him for taking Nicky's. Elsewhere, Elise and Geordie spend quality time together, with Elise probing Geordie about his car theft. She suspects his father holds himself accountable for their son's fate. Additionally, Elisa finds solace in relieving tension with Georgie. After their class, Walt catches up with Sherry and surprises her with a flower. Sherry suggests that they take a break from their frequent interactions. Meanwhile, Melissa enters the pizzeria where Georgie is working, feeling hurt that her friend ignored her party invitation. They make plans to meet up later. Later on, Catherine attempts to reconcile with Brady for her recent emotional outburst, but he remains distant and refuses to engage with her. Before retiring for the night, Catherine vocalizes her apology to herself. Melissa accompanies Geordie home and stops by to chat with him. She opens up about missing Nicky and confesses her feelings for Geordie. They share a moment, but their privacy is disrupted by Elise, who disapproves of Geordie bringing a friend home. Meanwhile, Walt spends quality time with his brother and notices Sylvie's phone on the table. He decides to extend an invitation for her to visit Dennis. After a while, Sylvia arrives, and Dennis, feeling nervous, hides under the covers. Sylvia understands the situation and offers to talk to her friend through the closed door. Dennis provides Sylvia with a chair, and they engage in conversation. In the evening, Walt visits Sherry's house, where Peter, Sherry's friend, confronts the professor. Sherry assists Walt in cleaning himself up. Later on, Melissa and Geordie find themselves riding on swings. Melissa inquires about Elise, but Geordie suggests changing the topic, and they share a kiss. Meanwhile, Sherry and Walt lie in bed together, indulging in ice cream. As they bond, Sherry recounts a time she interviewed a man after a trial where he was found not guilty of an accident. While Sherry admires the man's composure, the story leaves Walt feeling saddened. At the pizzeria, Geordie finds himself in a conflict with the cafe administrator. To defuse the situation, Melissa offers him a ride home. Once there, Geordie changes his clothes, avoiding a conversation with his stepmother, who is eager to talk. Upon arriving home, Walt revisits a newspaper article featuring the picture of the person he hit. Meanwhile, Geordie summons the courage to talk to his friend's mom, and they arrange to meet in the countryside. Catherine is enthusiastic about talking to Nicky's friend, and Geordie recounts the details of the accident, placing blame on himself for what transpired. As Geordie grapples with the loss of his friend, Catherine shares her own feelings about the incident. In the midst of these conversations, Dennis calls his brother, urging Walt to come see him and reminding him of his meeting with Sylvie. Catherine, feeling overwhelmed, vents her emotions by trashing her kitchen and setting a fire in the backyard with Nicky's belongings. Dale, alarmed by his wife's behavior, rushes to extinguish the fire. After the chaos settles, Catherine reaches out to her family and apologizes to Brady. She suggests a trip to visit his aunt, relieved when Brady agrees to give her another chance. Meanwhile, Dennis finds solace in rereading Sylvie's letters while anxiously awaiting his brother's arrival. Geordie reflects on life by the pond, contemplating his thoughts. Despite his initial panic, Dennis gathers his courage and prepares for his date, determined to step out of the house. Dale attempts to persuade Catherine not to leave, but she remains sorrowful over her husband's emotional distance. However, Walt arrives late, only to find that his brother has already gone on a date with another woman. While watching TV, the professor notices Sherry in a weather report and heads to a phone booth to leave a message for his wife. Suddenly, he makes a desperate decision to find the address of a family he feels responsible for. Meanwhile, Walt wants to speak with Catherine, but Dale, recognizing the man, tries to send him away. Catherine also recalls the face of the man connected to their son's death, but continues with her task of loading suitcases into the trunk. When Geordie arrives home, he notices his stepmother's injured lip. Suddenly, his father attacks him. Elise confides in Carl about Geordie's involvement with a woman. Walt attempts to offer an apology to Catherine amidst the chaos. Catherine and Walt engage in a physical altercation, but Catherine eventually gets into the car with her son to visit her sister. Walt lies on the road in front of the car, and Catherine pulls him away by the scruff of his neck to clear the path. Despite the chaos, Walt feels deep remorse for the situation, knowing it was his fault. Elizaza accompanies Carl to the hospital, while Dennis opts for the bus. At the bus stop, Melissa and Geordie join them, sharing a kiss that brings a smile to Dennis's face. At the cafe, Dennis enjoys time with his girlfriend, while Walt makes a stop at a pizza place for coffee on his way home. Meanwhile, Brady accompanies his mother on the visit, and Catherine smiles, finding solace in letting go of painful memories. As the movie concludes, it turns out to be Normal, released in 2007. Thanks for tuning in.